Have you ever worked so hard to build something for yourself, only to have someone come along and think they have every right to take it away? That's exactly what happened to me, except in my case, the thief wasn't just some random stranger. Nope. It was my next-door neighbor, who also happened to be the president of our HOA. And the best part? She wasn't stealing sugar, or water, or even Wi-Fi. Oh no. She was secretly plugging her bright yellow Lamborghini into my solar grid, draining my power to fuel her supercar. Now let me back up for a second, because to really understand how crazy this gets, you need to know what it's like living in a U.S. neighborhood with an HOA. For those outside America, a homeowners association is basically a neighborhood government made up of regular people who suddenly think they're running the White House. They create rules about everything: how tall your grass can grow, what color your garage door can be, even how long your trash bin can stay outside after pickup. And our HOA? It was run by one person, Karen. Now, I know Karen has become a bit of a meme, but trust me, she lived up to the name perfectly. She had the sunglasses, the haircut, the entitled attitude, and the belief that she was above every single rule she enforced. And of course, she had to drive the flashiest car on the block, a Lamborghini Huracan, painted in the brightest yellow you've ever seen. This wasn't just a car, it was her identity. Every morning, she'd rev the engine like she was starting a drag race, even if it was only 6 a.m. on a Monday. She'd cruise down the cul-de-sac at 15 miles an hour, blasting music just so everyone noticed her. She loved showing off. But here's the kicker: while she was nitpicking the rest of us for having unsightly recycling bins or grass longer than 2.5 inches, she was secretly breaking one of the biggest rules herself: trespassing onto my property and stealing electricity. At first, I didn't even realize it. But soon, I started noticing something strange. My solar monitoring app showed spikes in power usage that didn't make sense. My electric bills weren't skyrocketing, but something was definitely draining my system. And as I'd soon find out, the culprit was none other than Karen and her Lamborghini. At first, I thought maybe my solar system was just acting up. Sometimes the app glitches, right? Maybe there was a software update, or maybe my neighbors were accidentally leeching some Wi-Fi. But this wasn't Wi-Fi, this was power, and the spikes were way too consistent to be a random bug. The weird thing was, the spikes didn't happen at night, when people are usually using their ovens, ACs, or laundry machines. Nope. These spikes always happened in the afternoon, usually between 1 and 4 p.m. Almost like clockwork. I remember sitting in my backyard one afternoon, sipping iced tea, and hearing it, the unmistakable roar of Karen's Lamborghini. The kind of sound that makes birds scatter and babies cry. She revved it twice, then let it idle for a bit. That's when it hit me: the timing matched my energy spikes almost perfectly. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a coincidence. So, I decided to run a little test. The next day, I kept my eyes glued to my solar monitoring app. And right around 2:15 p.m., boom, the numbers jumped again. That same exact moment, I heard that familiar Lamborghini engine coughing to life down the street. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried connecting the dots while also trying not to accuse someone of something crazy, but let me tell you, it was driving me insane. So, I brought it up casually to a neighbor. I said, "Hey, have you noticed anything weird going on with Karen lately?" My neighbor chuckled and said, "Weird? You mean besides her acting like the Lamborghini makes her queen of the block? Oh, you didn't hear? She's been bragging about how she never pays for gas or charging." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Oh, she said she's got her own little arrangement with solar energy. Whatever that means." That was all the confirmation I needed. My stomach dropped. My suspicions weren't paranoia. Karen was actually bragging about stealing my power like it was some kind of neighborhood perk. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Here I was, paying thousands of dollars to install my solar system, maintaining it, making sure it ran efficiently, and Karen, the HOA president who fined people for not painting their fences the right shade of beige, was literally stealing from me and calling it an arrangement. It was almost too ironic. But still, I needed hard proof. Because if there's one thing I knew about Karen, it's that if I confronted her without solid evidence, she'd twist the story, turn the neighborhood against me, and suddenly I'd be the villain. So, I decided I had to catch her in the act. And when I finally did, oh boy, it was even worse than I imagined. It was a Saturday morning when everything finally clicked. I was out back, cleaning up some leaves, when I noticed something strange along the edge of my fence. At first, I thought it was just a garden hose, but then I saw it, a thick, black cable, running right over my fence like some kind of snake sneaking into my yard. My curiosity spiked. I followed it slowly, my heart thumping louder with every step. The cable led straight to the one thing I'd been suspecting all along. Karen's bright yellow Lamborghini. There it was, parked suspiciously close to the property line, her charging cable plugged directly into my outdoor solar outlet. The car's lights blinked softly as if mocking me, happily guzzling my solar power without a care in the world. I stood there frozen, half shocked, half laughing at the sheer audacity. Of course it's her. Who else would be bold enough to literally climb the fence with a Lamborghini Charger? For a moment, I considered unplugging it and walking away. But no. This wasn't just about stolen electricity. This was about principle. About the hypocrisy of an HOA president who thought she was above the very rules she shoved down everyone else's throat. So I did the only thing I could think of. I yanked the charger out of my outlet, coiled it up in my hands like evidence, and marched straight to her front door. Knock, knock, knock. After a long pause, Karen appeared, oversized sunglasses indoors, holding a half-finished iced latte. She tilted her head, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Oh, hi, what brings you here?" I held up the charger like it was Exhibit A. "Karen, why is your Lamborghini plugged into my solar outlet?" She didn't even flinch. She actually had the nerve to laugh. "Oh, that? Relax. You've got those panels sucking up all this free sunlight, you don't even use it all." I blinked at her. "Excuse me? That's not how this works. It's my property, my outlet, my power. You can't just..." She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a little juice. Besides, as HOA president, I could argue that you're being selfish for not sharing resources with the community." My jaw practically hit the floor. She wasn't just stealing from me, she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the selfish one. "Karen," I said firmly, "if I ever see your car plugged into my grid again, I'll treat it as theft. Plain and simple." Her smile faded just a little, but she still smirked. "Fine. Whatever you say." And she shut the door in my face. I walked back home, fuming. I wanted to believe she'd gotten the message. That maybe, just maybe, this would be the end of it. But deep down? I knew better. Because Karen wasn't the type to stop. No, she was the type to push boundaries until someone finally pushed back. And trust me, when she crossed the line again, that's when things really started to heat up. I wish I could tell you that Karen listened. That after our confrontation, she stopped sneaking her Lamborghini Charger into my solar outlet. But this was Karen we're talking about. And Karen? She didn't just keep stealing. She doubled down. The very next week, I came home from work early and nearly dropped my briefcase. There she was, standing in yoga pants, sipping a green smoothie, casually leaning against her bright yellow Lamborghini, parked practically on my property, while it charged from my solar grid like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze, staring at her. She gave me this little wave, like I was just another fan admiring her car. "Afternoon," she said cheerfully. "Karen," I muttered, trying to hold back my anger. "What on earth are you doing?" She sipped her smoothie and said, "Just a quick top-up. Don't worry, I won't be long." I wanted to scream. Instead, I unplugged the charger right in front of her. "This is theft." She rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. It's literally sunlight. It's free." Free? Was she serious? Sure, the sunlight was free, but the system that cost me thousands of dollars to install wasn't. And now, thanks to her, my usage data looked like I was running a secret crypto mining operation in my basement. But the worst part wasn't just the theft, it was the arrogance. Karen didn't even try to hide it anymore. Sometimes, she'd sneak over in the middle of the day when she thought I wasn't home. Other times, she'd boldly park her Lamborghini right next to my fence with the cable draped over like some kind of victory flag. And the neighbors? Oh, they noticed. One afternoon, I overheard two of them whispering while walking their dog. "Can you believe Karen? Using his power like that," one said. "Honestly," the other laughed, "I wouldn't be surprised if she started charging us for sunlight too." Another neighbor even joked, "Hey, maybe we should all line up our cars next to her Lambo. Free charging for everyone." The more people saw, the more ridiculous it became. Karen was no longer the classy Lamborghini owner showing off her status. She was becoming the neighborhood punchline. But did she care? Of course not. She strutted around like she was untouchable, because in her mind, being HOA president meant she could do whatever she wanted. And me? I was getting dangerously close to snapping. Every time I saw that cable draped across my yard, every time I saw my solar app spike, it felt like she was laughing in my face. That's when I realized, talking to her wasn't going to solve this. Reporting her to the HOA wouldn't work either, because SHE was the HOA. If I wanted this to stop, I'd have to take matters into my own hands. And that's when the idea of revenge, sweet, shocking revenge, first sparked in my mind. By this point, I was done playing nice. Karen had ignored warnings, laughed in my face, and turned my solar grid into her personal Lamborghini pit stop. If she thought she could keep getting away with it, she was about to learn otherwise. But I knew I couldn't just yank her cable every time or call the cops. Nah. Karen was slippery. She'd spin the story, claim harassment, maybe even fine me through the HOA. If I wanted to end this once and for all, I needed something smarter. That's when I called my buddy Mark. Now, Mark isn't just any friend. He's an electrician. The kind of guy who can rewire a breaker panel with one hand while eating a sandwich with the other. And when I explained the situation, he laughed so hard I thought he was going to choke on his coffee. Wait, he said between laughs. Let me get this straight. The HOA queen, Miss Lamborghini Yoga Pants, is stealing your solar power? Every day, I sighed. He slapped his knee. Man, you can't make this stuff up. So what do you want me to do? Install a coin slot? Make her pay quarters like it's a laundromat? I smirked. I was thinking something a little more shocking. Mark's eyes lit up. Oh, I like where this is going. Now before you panic, let me be clear, we weren't plotting to fry her or blow up her car. No. The plan was to set up the outlet so that if Karen plugged in without permission, she'd get a nice little jolt. Harmless, but memorable. Enough to fry her charger, maybe scare the life out of her, and most importantly, make her never want to mess with my solar grid again. So that weekend, Mark came over with his toolkit. We crouched by the outlet like two kids setting a prank. He showed me how to rewire it with a little twist, rigging it so it would still look perfectly normal from the outside but deliver our special surprise when Karen tried to use it. I'll admit, I was nervous. This wasn't the kind of thing you normally do to a neighbor, even a nightmare neighbor like Karen. But then I remembered her smug face, telling me that I was selfish for not sharing my power. That image alone fueled my determination. By the time Mark was done, the outlet was locked, loaded, and ready for action. We sat back, admiring our work. Tomorrow, he grinned, the Lamborghini gets a taste of justice. And let me tell you, when Karen showed up the next day with her bright yellow beast, yoga mat under one arm and charger in the other, she had no idea she was about to star in the most shocking performance of her life. The next afternoon felt like waiting for a fireworks show. I sat by my window, pretending to read a magazine, but really I was watching Karen like a hawk. Right on schedule, 2 p.m. sharp, I heard the familiar growl of her Lamborghini creeping down the cul-de-sac. The engine roared, the exhaust popped, and of course, she revved it twice just to make sure every living creature within 3 blocks knew she had arrived. She parked right next to my fence, same as always. Out came the yoga mat, the oversized sunglasses, and her smug little grin. She didn't even bother being sneaky anymore, she strutted around like she owned the place. Then, like clockwork, she grabbed the thick black charging cable, flung it over my fence, and shoved it straight into my solar outlet. And that's when the magic happened. Zot. High-voltage sparks shot out like the 4th of July. The charger crackled, smoke puffed into the air, and Karen screamed so loud I swear it set off car alarms down the street. What is happening? She shrieked, stumbling back like she'd just been attacked by a ghost. But it wasn't just her. The Lamborghini itself freaked out, the headlights flashed, the alarm blared, the horn honked non-stop like it was having a full-on panic attack. The sleek, flashy supercar suddenly looked like it was possessed. I stepped outside slowly, coffee cup in hand, trying my hardest not to laugh. Everything okay out here? I asked casually. Karen spun around, her face red, hair frizzed from the static. You sabotaged me. You tried to kill me. I raised an eyebrow. Kill you? Karen, you were stealing my power. Again. This is vandalism, she screeched, pointing at the smoking charger. You'll pay for this. But before I could even answer, the neighbors started gathering. One by one, doors opened, people peeked out, and within minutes half the cul-de-sac was standing there watching the show. Someone whispered loudly, "Did her Lamborghini just electrocute her?" Another shouted, "Hey Karen, maybe next time steal a Prius, less voltage." The crowd erupted in laughter. A couple even started clapping. Karen, humiliated, yanked the cable out of the outlet and tossed it into her car like it was a dead snake. She tried to act tough, but the Lamborghini betrayed her. It let out one last pathetic honk before falling completely silent, smoke still curling from the charger port. It was glorious. I sipped my coffee and said calmly, "Karen, maybe next time, ask before you borrow." Her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she barked, slamming the car door. The engine coughed, sputtered, then finally started as she peeled out of the street, leaving behind the smell of burnt plastic and her shredded dignity. The neighbors cheered like they'd just witnessed a sporting event. One guy even said, "Best neighborhood entertainment I've had in years." And me? I just went back inside, sat down, and thought, that was worth every single penny. After the Lamborghini lightning show, I thought Karen might finally learn her lesson. But no. This was Karen. And Karen wasn't the type to back down, she was the type to go nuclear. A week later, every homeowner in the neighborhood got an official-looking email from the HOA. Big, bold letters across the top, mandatory meeting, homeowner violation review. And guess whose name was plastered all over it? Mine. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint against me. According to her, I had tampered with HOA property, endangered a resident, and, get this, damaged her personal vehicle with malicious intent. When I read it, I almost spit out my coffee. HOA property? Since when was my solar grid hers? Endangered a resident? Please. She endangered herself by plugging into an outlet she had no business touching. And the part about damaging her Lamborghini? That almost made me laugh out loud. Still, I knew this was serious. Karen was the HOA president, and if she spun the story right, she could slap me with massive fines, maybe even push for legal trouble. The night of the meeting, the clubhouse was packed. People filled every chair, standing against the walls, whispering in anticipation. You could feel it, the neighborhood was buzzing, because everyone knew about the Lambo Zap incident. Karen sat at the front table, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, papers stacked neatly in front of her. She cleared her throat dramatically and said, "This meeting has been called to address a grave violation by one of our homeowners." She looked straight at me with this smug little smirk. I stayed calm. Because I knew what she didn't, I had receipts. Karen launched into her speech, painting herself as the victim. "I was simply charging my eco-friendly vehicle," she said, "when I was attacked by a dangerous, sabotaged outlet. My life was put at risk. My car was damaged. And this," she jabbed a finger in my direction, "this selfish individual refuses to cooperate with HOA community standards." There was a murmur in the crowd. A few gasps, a couple of awkward coughs. For a second, I thought she might actually sway some people. Then, I stood up. "Can I respond?" I asked. Karen rolled her eyes. "By all means." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the projector. Within seconds, the whole room could see live screenshots of my solar monitoring app. I clicked through the logs, pointing at the data. Every day, between 1 and 4 p.m., massive spikes in energy use. Now watch what happens when I overlay this with video footage from my security camera. The next slide came up, clear as day, Karen's Lamborghini parked by my fence, her cable plugged into my outlet, the timestamp matching the spikes perfectly. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, laughter, everyone saw it. Karen froze, her smug smile fading faster than her car battery. But I wasn't done. I clicked one more slide. Oh, and here's Karen bragging to our neighbor about her arrangement with solar energy. Roll the audio. I played the short clip I'd secretly recorded on my phone. Karen's voice echoed through the room, "I never pay for gas or charging. I've got my own little arrangement with solar energy." Boom. Case closed. The room exploded. People burst into laughter, some even clapped. One guy shouted, "Best HOA meeting ever." Karen's face turned crimson. She stammered, tried to change the subject, but it was too late. The evidence was undeniable. Finally, one of the HOA board members, who clearly had been fed up with her antics for a long time, leaned forward and said, "Karen, it seems you've been abusing your position. Effective immediately, I motion to remove you as HOA president." The vote was quick. Hands shot up all over the room. The decision was unanimous. Karen was out. The look on her face? Priceless. For once, she had no power. No car, no grid, no HOA throne to hide behind. Just a whole neighborhood watching her empire crumble in real time. The night of the HOA showdown felt like a victory parade. Neighbors patted me on the back, shook my hand, and laughed about how Karen's Lamborghini had turned into a fireworks display. Someone even joked about printing t-shirts that said, "Don't mess with solar power." But the best part? Karen was officially removed as HOA president. After years of nitpicking, bossing people around, and acting like she owned the neighborhood, she finally got a taste of her own medicine. Of course, she didn't take it well. For the next few weeks, she sulked around in her Lamborghini, sunglasses covering half her face, trying to avoid eye contact. But it was impossible, everyone knew. Whenever she drove by, kids would pretend to zap her car with imaginary remotes, yelling "ZAAP," and then collapsing in fake drama. Parents laughed. Even the dog walkers smirked. And her car? Oh, the poor Lamborghini wasn't the same. The charger port had melted just enough to need expensive repairs. Rumor was, the dealership quoted her nearly $10,000 to fix it. She had to tow it more than once, and every time, the neighborhood gathered on their lawns, waving as the flashy yellow car got dragged away like a wounded diva. Meanwhile, my life got a whole lot better. No more random energy spikes, no more mystery bills, no more smug HOA fines for leaving my trash can out for 12 minutes too long. The neighborhood actually felt lighter, freer. And the new HOA leadership? Let's just say they weren't big fans of Karen either. The first thing they did was pass a new rule: no resident shall tamper with another resident's utilities under any circumstances. They even nicknamed it the Karen Clause. As for me, I enjoyed every second of my newfound peace. I'd sit in my backyard, sip iced tea, and watch the sun hit my solar panels, my panels, knowing that every watt of energy was finally mine again. Every now and then, Karen would drive by slowly, glaring at me like she wanted revenge. But honestly, the power dynamic had shifted. She wasn't the HOA queen anymore. She was just the neighbor who got zapped by her own arrogance. And in the end, that was the sweetest part of all. Because when you mess with the sun, sometimes, you get burned.